Welcome to literary and jury charge practice. We'll start out with this closing argument. Ready? Here we go. He admitted he testified to that today, completely inconsistent with his deposition testimony. This does not depict what he testified to at his deposition. Moreover, he's got the tanker trailer going in the right through lane. Why has he got that there going in the right through lane? I'll tell you why. Because if he placed this properly in the lane, it wouldn't make sense. It would emphasize the fact that there's no room, and there shouldn't be room for any other vehicles to try and overtake him on the left side of the tractor trailer if they're originally traveling behind. Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard a lot today about the tractor's so dangerous, it's so flammable, it's danger, don't want to touch the tanker trailer. Well, as a jury, you'll draw on your common experience. I'm going to guess a couple of you on the jury have probably traveled Mattawoman Beantown Road just a few times in your life. You're familiar with this location. You ask yourself, you're following behind a tanker trailer full of flammable liquid. You're coming down the through lanes behind it, and it's merging into a turn lane. Do you try and whip around the left side of it and overtake it? Draw on your common experience. It's completely inconsistent with what makes sense for Mr. Quaid to have done at the time. If you are inclined to find that Mr. Irvin's version of events is more likely so than not that they have the burden, that it's more, if you say you know what, I just don't know who's more likely than not. I'm kind of there. He testified to this. He testified to that. I don't know. If that is the state, the scales of justice are evenly balanced, and you have to find in favor of the defendants because that means they haven't met their burden of proof. But if they do meet their burden of proof and you find, I'm going to answer yes to question 2 as to Baltimore tank lines, he was negligent. Mr. Quaid was negligent, and yes, he caused the accident. When you get to question 3, irrespective, surely you are going to find at a minimum that Mr. Irvin was at least contributorily negligent towards the collision. That's important. The question is, was the negligence of Theodore Irvin a cause of the collision between him and Ms. Young on March 13, 2006? Not was his contributory negligence a cause of the lane change or anything to do with the tanker trailer. Was his contributory negligence a cause of the collision? And I would submit to you the overwhelming weight of evidence clearly shows he was contributorily negligent at a minimum. He's only at the rear tandem wheels of the tanker trailer, but he never chooses to hit the brakes. Hit the brakes, pull back. You're trying, you come from a position behind him. You're trying to overtake him on the inside. Hit the brakes, ease off. No, doesn't do that. Instead, what he does is he checks his mirror, which he admitted he did, and he sees nothing in the left lane. He makes a decision, a mistaken decision, to make that lane change to the left. He missed Ms. Young. He didn't see her. He made a mistake. And not only did he change lanes to the left, but we've got an account for this differential of speed. Now, Ms. Young said she's going 35, 40 miles an hour. We know that. We know Ms. Young jammed on her brakes as she testified, and applied them prior to the collision. So we know that she slowed down substantially prior to the collision. We've got Mr. Irvin testifying he's going 35-40. Well, now, I'm no advanced physicist, but I understand you need to have speed differential in order for a collision to take place. In other words, Mr. Irvin has to have been going at a rate of speed slower than Ms. Young in order for the collision to have occurred. Well, if she's going 35-40 and she's hit the brakes and slowed down, but a collision still occurs, what do you think happened? Mr. Irvin went in the left lane and hit the brakes. He testified there was no one in the left lane ahead of him, the left turn lane. He could have accelerated into the left turn lane, but instead, when I asked him, you remember I asked him what happened when you went in the left lane. Did you accelerate? Did you decelerate? Did you hit the brakes? Don't know. Don't recall. Don't recall. That was his testimony. Well, we know a collision took place. We know that she did everything she could to avoid that collision and managed to jam the brakes on before it happened. There must have been a substantial decrease in the rate of speed from Mr. Irvin's vehicle. At a minimum, you'll find the answer to question 3 was Theodore Irvin's negligence on March 13th. Yes. Was his negligence the cause of the collision? Yes, it was. Could have sounded his horn. Didn't do it. Could have engaged his left turn indicator. Didn't do it. That's all violations of statute. It's negligence. I don't have a second opportunity to address you. The plaintiff will have a second opportunity. We don't get to do a rebuttal. That's cause, because it's their burden of proof. So I would just like to finish by thanking you again for your time today. And please bear in mind, when the plaintiff's attorney gets back up to present his rebuttal, view his rebuttal through the prism of skepticism, bearing in mind all the points that I've made. Ask yourself, what point would Mr. Stevenson point to in response to that? Thank you for your time. All right, let's try some literary material. This is one we had started before about the Long Beach Grand Prix. Ready? Here we go. Jim Michaels is president and CEO of the Grand Prix Association of Long Beach, the group that puts on the race. Affiliated with the race since 1975, he says the key to its success is appealing to a broad audience, not just to hardcore race fans. It's really 3 days of entertainment that happens to feature motor racing as one of the tent poles. Michaels says, That's why the race also offers music concerts, a lifestyle expo with exhibits from major automakers and suppliers, and a children's area with slot cars and racing games. Parents can race against their kids on a go-kart track. If you want a glass of wine while watching the race, several restaurants are located around the course with windows on the race action. The effort to broaden the race's appeal has paid off. Marketing surveys show a race attendance ratio of 59% male to 41% female, unheard of in motorsports. It shows everybody feels they can come out and have a good time, Michaels says. To further attract a wide range of fans, multiple types of racing are offered, including stadium super trucks, drift cars, sports cars, and the historic Can-Am cars and IndyCar. But the race weekend's marquee event is the IndyCar Series on Sunday. Long Beach is just one stop on a 16-course, 17-event season for the 2017 series, which uses the same type of vehicle found at the granddaddy of these races, the Indianapolis 500. Built on identical chassis, the cars are loud and fast. Last year's winner averaged a little over 100 miles per hour over the Seaside Circuit's 157 miles. In the past, one of the most popular events has been the Pro Celebrity Race. Celebrity drivers including Jay Leno, Tim Allen, Keanu Reeves, George Lucas, Cameron Diaz, and Sybil Shepherd raced each other around the track in identical Toyota cars. Unfortunately, that might have been the last Pro Celebrity Race. The event was discontinued after Toyota moved to Plano, Texas. All right, now let's try some jury charge practice. Ready? All right, here we go. And Section 6 or 21604C, a person may not, if another vehicle might be affected by the movement, turn a vehicle until it gives an appropriate signal in the manner required by the subtitle. And Section 21-801 AB, a person may not move a vehicle on a highway at a speed that, with regard to the actual and potential dangers existing, is more than that which is reasonable and prudent under the conditions. At all times, the driver of a vehicle on a highway shall control the speed of the vehicle as necessary to avoid colliding with any person or any vehicle or any other conveyance that, in compliance with legal requirements and the duty of all persons to use due care, is on or entering the highway. And then we have Section B of the this is 21-801.1AB4, unless there is a special danger that requires a lower speed to comply with Section 21-801 of the subtitle. The limit specified in this section or otherwise established under the subtitle are maximum speed limits. A person may not drive a vehicle on a highway at a speed that exceeds these limits except as otherwise provided in the section. The maximum speed limits are 50 miles an hour or undivided highways in other locations. Now, a plaintiff cannot recover if the plaintiff's negligence is a cause of the injury. The plaintiff has the burden of proving by preponderance of the evidence that the plaintiff's negligence was the cause of the plaintiff's injury. An employer or a principal is responsible for injuries or damages caused to others by acts of employees or agents if the acts causing the injuries or damages were within the scope of employment. The defendants suit as employer to employee. Now, in this case, we have the defendant, who is Mr. Danny Quaid, but he's technically not a defendant. But it has been stipulated that he was an employee of Baltimore Tank Lines at the time of the alleged collision. So the employer is responsible if you find that Mr. Quaid was negligent and his negligence was the cause of the injury. In this case, it will be your duty to return your verdict in the form of written questions to the written answers to the written questions which are submitted to you by the court. Your answers will constitute your verdict. Each answer is to be written in the space provided after each question. Before making each answer, all of you must agree upon it. In other words, your verdict must be unanimous. It is your duty to answer each of these questions in accordance with the evidence in this case. All right. That's it for that jury charge. And let's get back to some literary practice. Back to our Long Beach Grand Prix. Ready? Here we go. As race week arrives, the planning really revs up. Starting Monday morning at 6:30, race organizers meet with volunteers and city officials to go over minute-by-minute plans for the weekend. They refine the plan again on Tuesday, then finalize things on Thursday. Announcer Bruce Flanders has been the voice of the race since 1978. He says of the Wednesday meeting, "By the time we're done, I can tell you within 30 seconds when the final checkered flag will come down. Things have changed a lot over the years," says Flanders, now 71. In the beginning, the city was still a Navy town, home to the Long Beach Naval Shipyard. Its downtown had deteriorated. There was no parking structure, few restaurants, and lots of empty buildings. But that first Formula One race broadcast was sent out to countries all over the world, says Flanders, and it raised the city's profile. That positive attention slowly brought change to downtown Long Beach. Offices, restaurants, and new hotels and apartment towers replaced boarded up buildings. Retail areas such as Shoreline Village and the Pike Outlets were built. Pine Street was revitalized, and the world-class Aquarium of the Pacific opened. In 1981, says Michaels, Abram Pritzker came to town and was at the race. He was from the family that owns the Hyatt hotel chain. He saw how the city was starting to develop and said the city deserved a hotel. Shortly thereafter, the Hyatt Regency was built and now exists inside the race circuit. All right, that will conclude our literary and jury charge practice.